Hey, what's up, everyone? You're currently tuned into TBD on KCSB FM 91.9 in Santa Barbara and netnetradio.com out of Tijuana. Today, Light Talk and I are joined by Chicago musician Hali Palombo. How are you doing, Hali?
Hi, I'm doing good. How are you doing?
We're doing really well. We're really stoked to have you here. So what have you been up to, I guess, like before we like jump into the rest of the questions and stuff, like what have you been up to like the last year and stuff? Like what has been occupying your time?
So the last year, I have been recording a new record. I've been doing a lot of visual art, a lot of ink drawings of abandoned radio stations. So
nice.
I've been focusing on visual art. I've been, just kind of doing some general experimentation, focusing on drawing and trying to work on another record to release next year.
That's really cool. So I guess like your visual art and stuff, is that something you picked up recently, or is this something you've been doing for a while? You're kind of just like focusing on it now?
Sure. So I picked up visual art maybe 3 years ago, and it's something I've done on and off, just sort of as a hobby. I draw a lot of, like I said, ink drawings that are kind of inspired by radio schematics and technical drawings. And just recently, maybe within the past, like I said, year and a half, I've started to get a bit more serious about it and more focused and invested in it. So yeah, in short, I've been doing it for a few years, but this year I'm like doing it way more.
That's cool. So I guess like, do you want to talk a little bit more about like your ink drawings of like the abandoned radio stations? So like, how do you find like radio stations that are abandoned, I guess? Like, where do you find that?
Sure. So actually, I located a really sizable list on I forget the website off the top of my head, but they have a very long list of stations and coordinates of abandoned radio stations. So I punch the coordinates for the radio stations into Google Maps, and then I use that as a visual reference when I'm drawing the stations.
Oh wow, that's so sick. So do you actually like go inside these stations too?
So actually, I just went on a pretty sizable road trip where my main goal was to find some of the radio stations that I drew. So I kind of planned this road trip around coordinates of the stations that I found to be most interesting, so I could locate them and take pictures of them and attempt to get inside them. I visited 3 stations and I did take pictures, but unfortunately I couldn't open the door and get into any of them without probably getting in a substantial amount of trouble for trespassing, which I didn't feel like dealing with. So
could you tell if there was like any equipment still inside, or like, I don't.
Yeah. So I visited 3. The one that I came across in Iowa, I looked in the window and I definitely saw what looked like a microphone on a desk and a pile of papers. But other than that, I couldn't see anything else. But I assume there's some equipment in most of the abandoned stations, but I don't know for sure.
So you said you saw a microphone. Like, do you think people are just like doing like pirate radio out of these places, or like I don't know.
So the microphone that I saw was obviously very old, and it generally the type of that type of microphone is used for just like general broadcasting. So I assume it was from when the station was functional.
Yeah.
And then it just got left there. So that's my assumption.
Interesting that they left it. I feel like that would probably be kind of sick, like if you could use that still or something like that. I feel like that'd
absolutely
be kind of cool, you know?
Trust me, if I wasn't like, kind of not in the mood to deal with cops, I would have broken in and taken some stuff for sure.
For sure. Yeah. That would have been sick.
Yeah.
I wonder if there's abandoned radio stations around California that we could go to. Like, I feel like that'd be really cool just to like see, you know?
Oh, I'll email. There's a huge list. I'll email you a list of stuff around Santa Barbara when we're done interviewing.
Oh, definitely. That would be so sick, actually. That'd be really cool.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, yeah. Of
course. So I know you visited like the world's largest truck stop. Was that? So was that on the same road trip?
Yes, it was. That was this is going to sound really weird, but that was the highlight of my entire trip. It was so cool. It was amazing.
I was like keeping up on your Instagram of like just like your whole trip to like this truck stop, and I was like, wow, this actually seems kind of sick. Like this is kind of cool.
It was. So the interesting thing about that truck stop in particular was it's basically like a huge complex where truck drivers can like take care of a bunch of like kind of basic needs. Like there are showers, which I took a shower in the truck stop, and I will tell you that is the best shower I've ever had in my life.
That's so cool.
I don't know why, but like I paid them $14. $14 for a shower is a little expensive, but it was worth the money. And then they like guide you to a room with a shower in it, and like the water was so hot and it was so nice. But anyway, back to what I was saying. It's kind of like a complex where truck drivers can take care of a bunch of stuff.
Yeah.
Like there's a dentist, mysteriously. There's a laundromat, like a dentist for truckers. It's like the craziest thing. Like I wanted to know more about it, but it was closed. But there's a dentist in there, a laundromat. There was a library. There was a ton of restaurants. Yeah. And then there was a movie theater.
That's crazy. So were they playing like new movies and stuff, like up to date movies?
They were.
Wow.
It was really interesting. I wasn't able to get in because they were closed the night I went, but I looked at they have a little marquee, and they listed some releases, and like there were newer movies. So I really wish I could have gotten in and looked, but it was closed, unfortunately.
That's so interesting. So where was this truck stop?
It was in Walcott, Iowa, which is pretty close to the border of Illinois. I think if I remember correctly, it's like 30 minutes away from the border of Illinois. And the town that it's in, Walcott, is pretty small. It was kind of a smaller town. If I remember correctly, it's only populated by a few thousand people.
Interesting.
But it was, Walcott, Iowa was where it was.
That's kind of cool. So that must be like a massive like truck area, or like place where truckers pass through. Am I right? Like, yeah,
definitely. It is right off of a highway that is like, there were tons of truck drivers on it. Like I don't know a ton about like freight in general, but I saw a ton of trucks. So I assume that it's like kind of a hub where tons of truck drivers like are able to pull off the road and just like hang out at this truck stop. And it was incredibly crowded. There were tons of truckers there. Amazing, just tons and tons of people.
That's honestly really, kind of cool.
Really, it was cool. It was really cool. I wanted to like interview people and like make conversation with them. Like, hey, this is a pretty cool truck stop. Like, and like ask them questions about it. But I'm like, man, these people don't want to talk to me. They want to do their laundry, and so I'm just going to leave them alone.
Wow.
Yeah, I was going to say, I feel like it'd be really interesting to just like talk to those people. Like, I actually met a truck driver the other day. I had to take an Uber to work, and my car was like, I was like in the process of fixing my car, and I just didn't finish it that day. So I had to take an Uber, and I don't even know how we got into the conversation, but the guy was talking to me about like mechanics. I was talking to him about my car, and I was like, oh, so are you a mechanic? And he's like, well, I'm actually a retired truck driver.
Oh,
and so,
excellent.
Yeah. So I was just like chatting with him about it. And he was telling me that his route was, where was it? It was like somewhere he started in like, he lived in LA, went to like somewhere in like the Central Valley to start his route. And then he went from like the Central Valley to like Toronto to like New York, and then back to LA. And he was like, I would do that in a week. And I'm like, bro, you traveled the country in a week. Like,
that's crazy. That's crazy to me. That's like the entire country.
I know. It's insane. Yeah. And
that's miles.
I know. Yeah. And so I'm asking him like, so like, what, like, I don't know, like, what's it like? Can you just like take a break? Do you like just take a week off? And he's like, no, like I'll like stop in LA. And he's like, if I get back early, I'll have like a day. If not, and then like, you know, I'll go to sleep, wake up the next morning, do the route again. And
yeah. It seems like hard work. When I graduated high school, it was a thing that I was considering doing. And then I got to reading about it, and I'm like, man, like what I would want to do if I were a truck driver is what you cannot do as a truck driver, which is take a leisurely route and stop and get out of your truck and like look at interesting stuff every 10 minutes, which you can do in a car. You sure can't do it in a truck. So I thought like, that's not a good career for me. That's not a good idea. I'll just, be a tourist of this country.
I'd rather just like drive around in my car with my friends, like.
Yeah, exactly.
It was like, I was asking him too. I was like, so why do you just not take time off? Like, why do you just not like take a week off and just like, enjoy your life for a little bit? And he's like, because like, I guess he says you have to like give over your truck to like whatever company you're trucking for. So, cause like, I guess like he didn't own his own truck or something. So I guess if you take time off, you have to give your truck back to the company. But if you do that, you also have to like take out your mini fridge and like all this other equipment that's like inside the truck and your bedding and like all this other stuff. So you're basically like moving out of your like mobile house.
Oh man.
Yeah. And so he says that's actually like a lot more work than just like waking up the next morning and just like going to work again,
Yeah.
Yeah. So it seems like hard life, honestly. But I mean, I was also listening to like an NPR story recently where they're talking about how like, I guess like trucking is like, there's like a shortage of truckers or something, apparently.
I heard that same report.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
huge shortage. People, they were actually, I heard elsewhere on a shortwave radio podcast that they were calling in like National Guard to step in and be like de facto truck drivers because there is such a massive shortage of truck drivers that they're like, we need somebody to step in and take this over and like, handle it because we have a huge deficit, which I thought was very interesting.
It was interesting. Yeah, definitely. I know they're also saying that they're trying to like recruit like high school students too. Did you hear that part of the story, Maddie? I know they were saying they wanted to like start like advertising to like high school students. Like this is a career you can go into after college and it pays well. Like,
I'm not surprised though.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting. Anyways, truckers, dude. It's cool stuff.
It is cool.
There's thousands of unloaded trucks right now, everyone. So let's join.
Right.
Yeah.
Join up. Let's all drive trucks. Have you ever been in a truck like sat in the passenger seat while someone's driving one?
No, but I assume it's insane because they have so many gears. I feel like they're just constantly shifting,
Yeah. I haven't myself, but I would love to. I would love to do that. Like take your daughter to work day with like a trucker who's not my dad.
Yeah.
But,
it's always the parts of, I wonder how they get up specifically just giant hills, because on the drives I've been doing when I go to work, the exit that I have is right off of it's just right off of the top of a hill. And so all of the trucks always have this very orderly kind of patience of what they're going to do. And then they'll turn on their blinker lights and both of them are kind of flashing. Yeah. And I'm always like, it's the same pattern, the same thing. It's really annoying, but I have to respect it.
No, of course. I get that totally.
It's also like terrifying too. Like, are you ever driving down like a massive like grade, and then you just have like a massive like sand like pit that like the trucks can drive into if their brakes go out or something? That's so terrifying. Like,
it's terrifying.
Yeah.
So have you been playing gigs?
Yeah.
I guess that was where we're kind of, pivot.
Yeah, no, you have to pivot from trucks. But I have actually just played one in Rock Island, Illinois, which is to go back to Iowa. I'm like obsessed with Iowa for some reason. It's a town that's on the border of Illinois and Iowa. And that was great. It was at a venue called Ross Talks, which really fun and interesting show, and my first show in about 2 years. And it was really easy to kind of snap back into it. And I played a really, really great set. So I'm hoping to get some more gigs booked soon, because I've really, really missed playing with COVID and everything. Like, it's something I really miss doing.
So you said it was like easy to just jump back in?
Yeah, I was surprised how easy it is. It's like, this is a cliche, but people say like, it's like so-and-so, such and such things like riding a bike, like you don't forget how to do it. And like, it's true. Like I was pretty nervous, but then when I got up there and started playing, I'm like, oh, this is actually really easy. And it's I'm still just as good, and I haven't fallen out of practice at all. Like it was really great. It was really satisfying performance.
That's cool. What format did you go? I guess if that's like the proper thing to ask.
What format? What do you mean?
I don't know. Like what kind of music?
What was the setup for
the show, I guess.
I suppose kind of the material you've been pulling from, and then visually, light wise, just kind of how it came to be.
Sure. So what I did was I put out a record called Cylinder Loops on a label called oh wow, you have it right there.
Yes, I wrote the review. It tabs out for that. I really do love this tape a lot.
Oh my God, you wrote that review?
Yes.
That's like my favorite review of the record. That's amazing. Thank you for writing that. I love it. I had no idea. I'm so sorry.
No worries.
Yeah, I had no clue. But yeah, I performed material from Cylinder Loops almost exclusively. And I also played about 10 minutes of material that was not on the record. So unreleased Cylinder Loop stuff. So it was excellent. So that's what I played. And then for visuals, somebody who I know through a friend did visuals, and he did it on like, I don't know exactly what he does, but it looks like enchanting. Like I think he paints film strips and then he projects them, and it just like makes these really psychedelic, like black and white, like they look like ink blots, and like it's beautiful. If you go to my Instagram, the Hali Palombo 92, there's videos like all over it. So I would give it a look. It's so hard to describe, but yeah, the visuals were perfect. It was a really amazing show.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Hopefully you can come out to California sometime. We could see you do some stuff.
Oh, I would love to. I'd love to like book a tour sooner than later, and I'll certainly go to California.
That'd be so sick, actually. Yeah.
I'd love to.
I usually say this at the end, but if you need a spot in, I guess, Southern California, northern/Southern California. It's like the north of the Southern California portion. If you need to show up there, let us know.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely.
Anyways, I guess like hopping into, could you like shine some light on like your formative music moments and inspiration? Like you're Chicago based, right?
I am Chicago based. So I started music about 4 years ago. I had never done it before. I did play upright bass in high school, but I was never like really super invested in it. But about 4 years ago, I was kind of messing around in GarageBand, just sort of passively. Like I was just like clicking around, like, oh, cool, I'm gonna just mess around with this and kind of just do random stuff with it. And so I made a record that I did not expect to ever. I didn't expect it to see the light of day. Really, kind of a primitive record. Like it's me, like kind of humming and making noises and playing a toy piano. And I took a bunch of shortwave radio samples and kind of made this weird little thing with it. And then my friend Nick, if I remember correctly, I sent it to him, and he said, "Whoa, this is really good. I would like to put it out on my label, which is called Midwaste Tapes." And he put it out, and it was amazing, and a lot of people like started picking it up really quickly and listening to it, and then I just kind of went from there. So I'm kind of I suppose you would call me a bit of a late bloomer, because I didn't start making music until I was about 26. It was pretty much, I kind of messed around and made something weird, and somebody loved it. And that's kind of been the story of my career ever since.
Oh, wow. That's interesting. I was going to say, I feel like a lot of the people that we have on the show, they're like, yeah, I used to play in like punk bands and like all this other stuff. And then, yeah, that's really cool. So were you involved in like a scene at that time at all? Like before that?
No, I was not. I actually, I'm like textbook definition of a loner. Like I'm a very solitary person. I was, pretty much through my teens and 20s, I spent a lot of time by myself, kind of pursuing more technical hobbies.
Mm-hmm.
I was not part of a scene in any way, which made kind of the beginning of my career somewhat challenging, because I had to get my work in front in front of people, and I was not like involved in a scene or particularly social. So I had to find like creative ways to step out of my comfort zone and do that. But yeah, that was kind of a roundabout answer. No, I was not involved in any scenes. I was kind of a loner.
No, that's really cool though. I liked hearing that. So I guess you said you had to like find some roundabout ways. Like, how did you cope with like, I guess, trying to like, meet more people and like, I guess like associate? Because it's like weird when you're in a music scene. If you want to make stuff happen, you just have to constantly be talking to people. Like,
yep. It's rough, and it has really it's not rough now, but it was rough in the beginning, and it really made me tackle a lot of pretty severe issues that I had with social anxiety through my whole life. Like I had to say, okay, I'm gonna start seeing a therapist. I'm gonna try to get a hold on my social anxiety, and like get out there and kind of force myself to talk to people, which I did not expect to work, but it kind of did work. And I was able to get my work in front of interesting people and interested people. So yeah, it was kind of like I had to do my best to push through the anxiety and talk to people.
That's really cool.
Which I still have to do today. I still do have social anxiety, and it can be tough, but like when you get your work in front of the right person and you kind of overcome that anxiety to the best of your ability, it's really rewarding.
Yeah, that's awesome. So I guess like, would you say like getting involved in music was kind of life-changing? It sounds like you almost had kind of like a life-changing experience almost like.
Oh, absolutely. It completely changed the course of my life in a very radical way.
Yeah.
I after high school, I had absolutely no idea what I was doing with my life, which I know is a pretty common theme, but I had absolutely no interest in college. I have attention deficit disorder, so that made school in general very difficult, and it kind of harbored like a general disinterest in school and a frustration with it. So after high school, I spent a lot of time like kind of trying to figure out what exactly I wanted and what I wanted to do. And then, when I was 26, like I said, out of nowhere, I just had some random idea to do it. I made a record, and like it kind of went from there. But absolutely, it was getting into music was pivotal. It changed my life in an indescribable way. Like if I went back in time and told myself when I was like, let's say 22, at like the height of my confusion with life, I said, hey, you're 29 and you just got nominated for a $50,000 grant. I like wouldn't even know what to say. I would be like elated because at that point in my life, I had absolutely no idea what I was doing or what was going to happen. So yeah, music has no hyperbole. It has changed my entire life.
That's awesome. That's like super inspiring, actually.
Oh, thank you. Yeah.
So you said, I don't know, were you always based in Chicago? Sorry if you already answered that. I don't remember.
Oh, no, I didn't.
Okay.
So I was, after I went to high school in a suburb of Chicago. And then right after that, I actually moved to Oakland, California. So I was in California.
Oh, I see.
Actually for like 2 or 3 years.
Cool.
And then I moved back to Chicago and started up with music. So
I see.
Yeah. To answer your question, I suppose that while I didn't live in Chicago my entire adulthood, I am based in Chicago because that's where I got started with music.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. I guess Maddie, did you want to take this next one?
Yeah, I mean, in spite though of the fact that you don't come from a traditional or like DIY background here with music, the common point that comes up in the sounds that you brought to the table here, shortwave radio. And in your piece that you did with the Chicago Reader, you had a really lovely quote where you talked about your interest in shortwave radio and the fact that you can hear people and music and sounds from literally all over the world, which also boggled my mind. Like with the radio or stuff that you're using, are you able to kind of just grasp from stuff that goes far beyond like just America?
Oh, absolutely. When you turn on a shortwave radio, and you can scan for 2 minutes and you can hit a station in China, a station in the Philippines, Italy, like Greece, like you can listen to radio anywhere in the world. And you can, it's like, yeah, anywhere on earth you can you can listen to radio. And also you can like get really granular and listen to, 100 stations just in your area. So shortwave radio is the sphere it occupies is massive. Like you can listen to stuff anywhere you want it at all. It's really mind blowing.
Can you oh, sorry, Maddie. Can you talk a little bit about what shortwave radio exactly is? I guess for anybody that doesn't know, I mean, I don't know exactly what it is. How does it reach? I know most radio stations only reach 70 miles or something.
Yeah. So the software and the equipment that broadcast the signals, just kind of in short, it is significantly more powerful than that of let's say an FM transmitter. So if you're broadcasting via shortwave radio, it kind of projects to a massive radius, so you can kind of listen to it all over the world, as opposed to with an FM station where the radius that you can hear it from is limited and a little bit smaller. So let's say if you had a radio station, you would only an FM station, you can only really hear it in proximity to where it's being broadcasted. And if you drive away from it, a few miles or, however much, you will lose connection. But with shortwave radio, you can listen to shortwave in, one city, and then you can go, 10, 15 cities over, and you can still hear it. So basically, it's the strength of the equipment that broadcasts the signal. It's very strong, so you can pick it up pretty much anywhere. That's insane. Yeah. Why would I don't know, people not utilize this more? I feel you never hear about shortwave radio, really. You never. It is unfortunately kind of a dying format of communication. A lot of the folks who kind of started the hobby and popularized it, they're dying, unfortunately. They're very old. So it's really and other than that, then the people who were the biggest proponents of it passing away, it is very it's technically complicated, so it's really hard to get started. For a lot of people, it can be challenging. Can be pretty expensive. You can access shortwave radio online, but if you want to transmit via shortwave radio, you sometimes you have to buy kind of a lot of equipment that can be very expensive. And also the signal can be much weaker. So with an FM radio station, it's usually crystal clear. You can hear it really well. The signal is very strong. And it does reach a limited amount of people, but the people who hear it, who are generally in more somewhat not urban areas, but more populated areas, they can hear it very, very clearly, and it works well. But if on shortwave radio, it's finicky, the signal can be really weak. It can be difficult to find a way to listen. And also it's not really commercially friendly like FM radio is, where you can broadcast commercials, and it's easier to make money from it, I believe, than shortwave radio is. So there's a lot of reasons that make shortwave radio kind of a more difficult thing to get into and to broadcast on than something like FM radio. So yeah, it can. There's a ton of reasons. So is shortwave radio regulated by the FCC, like FM and stuff is? It is. A lot of rules are not followed, a lot of them, which is that's fine. That's fine with me. But a lot of the time rules are disregarded, but technically, they are. So do you broadcast at all? No, I actually never have. Wait, let me rephrase that. I have a slot purchased on Radio Miami, which is a shortwave radio station that I broadcast my radio show and my podcast on. So technically I do broadcast, but I don't do it myself. I don't have the rig and the setup to broadcast from my house. Yeah. I have a studio, a radio station in Miami do it for me. That's actually really cool. Yeah. So yeah. You just, go ahead. So do you just send your stuff to them? Is Radio Miami like a hobbyist thing, or are they an actual like a business or something? Yeah, so Radio Miami, they sell out time slots to basically whoever asks for them. Like as long, and they do not listen to the content they're broadcasting, which can result in some like I've heard some pretty like some stuff broadcasted on Radio Miami that is like not exactly kosher or or acceptable. But I've heard it broadcasted because you can pay Radio Miami like $60 for a month, and you can have an hour-long slot every week to broadcast whatever you want, which is what I do.
That is so wild. So they literally just don't care. It's like, oh, if you pay us, we'll just throw it on the air.
Yep. They don't listen to my stuff. They don't vet it. They don't do any quality control. So like I could literally record whatever on earth and broadcast it. And they'd be like, okay, let me just upload this to our server and press a button. And everything will be great. Please give me $60. And like, that's the whole, that's it. But I mean, I assume that if the FCC were to like report something to Radio Miami, the show would get removed. But like, I don't know how often that's actually happening, because to this day, they have some questionable stuff broadcasting.
Like, what's the most insane thing you've heard on Radio Miami?
All right. So there is this shortwave radio preacher, and his name is Brother. Brother Stare. Brother Stare.
I think I saw that in your interview.
Yep. Yeah. And he's I'm not going to get too into it. But he says some reprehensible stuff. Well, said, he's actually dead now. He died. But he said some reprehensible stuff, some like, racist and sexist. And he was, an extreme Christian. So he had very old school values, but he mixed those values up with like just he's like the worst bigot of all time, and the absolute worst. And Radio Miami to this day broadcasts pre-recorded shows that he did like years ago, and they're still running them. And very unfortunately, I had to ask them to move my slot because my show was sandwiched between two Brother Stare broadcasts.
Oh my God.
I'm like, no, like I don't want that. Please. I don't want to, be broadcast in between two Brother Stare broadcasts. But yeah. That's the worst thing they broadcast is Brother Stare, like by far.
So did Brother Stare like have a following or something? Or is this guy just like, I'm just going to go and spew like the worst possible stuff to come out of my mouth and just have nobody listen to it?
So Brother Stare had it still exists. I'm not sure how strong it is now, but had a compound in West Virginia of it kind of like I'll also call it a cult, because it was sort of a cult of these like hyper fanatic followers. And you can find pictures of them online. It's really the whole kit and caboodle. Like they don't cut their hair. They wear very traditional clothing. They are all on the older side. They like grow their own vegetables and what have you. Like it's essentially a cult type commune, but it's extremely Christian. And he broadcasted from his compound.
That's actually like kind of sick, but like just I guess not like the stuff that they believe. That they believed in, or like.
No, I agree with you. The concept is, and like it, if you were to remove the terrible core of it, the concept is very interesting. Having a like kind of a cultish like commune that has a shortwave radio station broadcasting from it. It sounds like a movie, like or it could be a movie. It could be a movie. It's interesting concept, but terrible person.
Wow, that's so interesting, actually.
Yeah, it's really interesting.
Maddie, did you have anything to add to this topic of shortwave?
I guess to me also, it was in the way that you really talk about it. It reminded me a bit of an Eric Dolphin quote that had kind of gone my way regarding his stuff with Coltrane. And then what he was talking about with doing live music, where when you hear this music, after it's over, it's just gone and you could never really capture it again. And so much of this also, it exists in that moment. And with the work you've done, especially in regards to shortwave radio, just how do you know when that you're scanning the radio, you've kind of hit something that you are really excited about? What really is the most tantalizing stuff to you that you find in there or that you want to sample?
So it's different. So for music, my process of locating the right stuff to sample is different from my process as just a curious listener. So with music, what I do is what I've been doing for a few years is I turn on a radio and I just sit there and I like just scan it. I hit the next station button over and over, and the stuff that holds my interest is more textural and more of like kind of like a centerpiece is what I'll say. So I'll find a clip of like just static that I find particularly appealing. So static I find appealing, or Morse code. I find a lot of Morse code that I record, and I think this would make a really nice rhythmic track for this thing I'm recording. This would be good rhythm, and then the static would be good texture. It'll be nice to layer other things on top of. So I'm always looking for like rhythm and texture, which I normally find like with like interference or static or beeping or whatever. And then I listen for another thing, which I call like kind of a centerpiece of a song. So I'll have the textural stuff, and then I'll find something that is more melodic or more just more interesting to listen to, more like more centered around a subject, like somebody talking, saying something humorous or interesting, or like a number station, which is like a spy broadcast where they're just like repeating numbers. It's a whole thing. So, or like a number station, or a bit of music that is really heavily distorted. So I'll have like more textural stuff, and then I'll have more of a thing that I want to be a focus point of a song. And then I'll kind of layer them on top of each other. So that is my process for composing music. And then just as a general curious listener, I really listen to all kinds of stuff. And generally, when I'm listening, I kind of look for amateur radio broadcasters who are just, going off on a unique tangent, and they're having a kind of a throwaway, mundane conversation with somebody. And kind of in the spirit of what you said, Maddie, they're having a conversation that I know just exists in this moment. I will never hear this again. So I'm always like, oh man, I really want to listen to this mundane conversation these people are having, because like, this is a moment that I will never experience again. I'll never have this moment again. Like, so I'm very interested in the more mundane amateur radio broadcasts. And I'm obsessed with them. And I have a whole record of just amateur radio, chatter. But yeah. And then I also like listening to music from countries that I'm not entirely familiar with. So, scanning around, I'll find a really interesting, broadcast from Asia, like traditional live music that's being played on a station that I've never heard before. So it's like musical curiosities, and then kind of mundane conversations that I know if I don't, sit and listen to them, they will disappear, and like I'll never get to hear them again. So they hold my interest.
That's interesting. So I guess if you had a shortwave radio or something, say you could like, would you be like possibly be able to communicate with these people too? Or is that just like they're in a studio together? So probably not, right? That's more of that.
Right. Yeah. You wouldn't necessarily be able to communicate with a station because it's like kind of outbound only. However, if I were to get a rig set up and get certified and everything, I would be able to communicate with people broadcasting on amateur radio stations. So that's a different thing. But stuff where it's like people in a studio sending out a signal and not accepting one, like I couldn't talk to them, but I could definitely talk to people who are amateurs.
Okay. So yeah, that's interesting. So I was in like Boy Scouts once upon a time, right? And I took the radio merit badge, and I had to go to somebody's house, like a friend or something that had a radio station. And it was in a barn and stuff. And I'm like I think I was like too young to appreciate it, but it was like this radio station, like a barn. And I don't know, he said that you could like transmit like photos or something through like this, like, what is that?
That's also what I wanted to ask.
That's like I'm very excited that you asked that. So I you can transmit photos via a medium of broadcast called slow scan television, or SSTV, which again, huge component in my work, like huge. I've put out, I think, four visual pieces for galleries around Chicago, and on a label called Nihilist Records, I put out a slow scan television thing that came with a USB with a video on it.
That's sick.
I'm really going off on a tangent. I just love slow scan.
No, that's awesome.
I love slow scan television so much. But essentially what it is to broadcast an image, you can take any image you want and put it into a kind of the transmission software on your computer that encodes it into a very long, frankly, horrific sound. It's just a bunch of it's screeching and beeping, and it's awful. However, if you feed the signal that it produced, all the beeping, into a decoder, it transmits the image line by line. So what you can do on radio, on amateur radio, is you can broadcast this signal, which is a lot of screeching, and like I said, it's terrible. But people with software on the other end can transmit your image, and can decode your image, and it'll come up on their software. So that's how you transmit images over the radio, is through this really long kind of sound that you need software to decode.
I've got a comment and a question about that. So the comment, it doesn't sound too far off. I know Radiohead, God, I don't even have my damn poster behind me, but for OK Not OK, they hit on a tape a ZX Spectrum computer program.
Yeah.
You just put that on a tape, you put it into Audacity, and if you had, the thing, you could encode the little Easter egg they had.
Yeah.
But that is a question I have for this is, based on, I guess, the color of an image, do you get different sounds? If you were just doing like a black and white versus, I don't know, like a tricolor thing, what would
you do? Yes, absolutely, you do. But it's not as interesting as you would think, because the difference between transmission of a black and white image and difference of a color, broadcast of a color image, like the sound file, is so subtly different that it's almost impossible to tell. Like, if you listen to a black and white one and a color one, like, there will be differences, but they will not be very interesting. But yes, to answer your questions, they sound different, for sure. And there are also like tons of different modes of slow scan TV. Like, there are ones that are higher resolution. There are ones that are lower resolution. There's ones that are a different color palette. There's ones that are like sepia toned, or I think it's sepia. Like, there's tons of different modes that all sound vaguely different, but not different enough to be really notable or interesting.
That's so interesting, actually.
Yeah. So yeah, it's really cool.
It's crazy how like you can just like broadcast like an image or something via radio, and you can turn it back into an image. Like, that's so crazy.
Yeah, exactly. It's incredibly interesting, and it's honestly maybe not my very favorite, but one of my favorite parts of shortwave radio, because like, you can scan around on amateur radio and you'll hear somebody broadcasting an image, and like you'll tear your software, you'll get your software open, and you'll be like, oh man, like I got to decode this. And then like you'll have a picture on your screen, and it's like, it's really amazing. It kind of reminds me of like a message in a bottle. Like,
yeah,
you have
exactly.
like you have someone broadcasting an image, and like, they don't know who's going to get it, or if anyone will even see it, but they throw it into like the void basically. And then somebody like says, oh, I got it. Let's see what this image is. And more often than not, it's like ladies in bikinis, or like,
that's what I was going to say. I saw like when I was a kid, I like just visually have this like image, like, oh, that's a woman in a bikini. Like, totally. It's like people's dogs, or women in bikinis, or like weirdly people's kids, which like, those are weird to get. I'm like, yeah, your kid, like some random kid. Like, I don't, but like, yeah. That's strange.
Yeah. It's odd, but like, yeah, it's amazing. It's really amazing.
So can you transmit video at all, or would that just be too insane? Like,
there is no way to transmit video right now. I think that would make the signal that is being broadcasted like way too complex.
That's what I was going to say. Yeah.
Yeah. And hard to read. But yeah, that's a really cool idea. I wish that you were able to transmit video, but I don't think you can right now.
Does it take a long time to I guess decode an image?
It depends on what resolution you are sending it in and what mode you're sending it in. So if you are sending something that's in as clear a resolution as is humanly possible, it can take 15 minutes to broadcast all the way, and which is really rare. You don't encounter those much. More often, though, you get a very low resolution image that takes up 8 seconds to broadcast. So it's all over. It's all over the place.
That's so interesting.
Yeah.
I guess continuing off of a bit of this kind of the recording setup that you were using, and then both with visuals and audios, what are you doing right now? What are you hoping to expand with? And then I guess factoring in this television aspect, how do you make a piece out of that? Yeah. So right now, my setup for recording has always been kind of shockingly simple. People are wow, that's really all you have and all you use, because doing shortwave samples is a lot of it's software based, because I use a software based radio. So it's all in my computer. And I do a lot of plundering. So I do, I sample pre-existing sources, the Wax Cylinder archive at actually the college that you're broadcasting from is we're gonna get to that.
Yeah, good. Okay, good, excellent. So my recording setup is very simple. I really just have a computer and a hard drive, and I take recordings from directly into my computer, and I use those. So that is I'm reaching a point in my career where I'm finding that to be rather limiting. So I want to expand my studio and start incorporating more complex and interesting methods of collecting samples, and I want to make it more physical and less entirely digital. So in short, my setup right now for creating work is very simple. And I would like to kind of make it more complex eventually, but I'm not sure what that would be like yet. I don't know what that would be.
And then in regards to doing a piece like you did at ESS with taking kind of one of those static images and making a tune out of it, how would you go about with that? How did that kind of come together?
Sure. Yeah. So I guess what you saw at Experimental Sound Studio at ESS was slow scan. It was a slow scan television broadcast. So the way I do that is I have, like I said, the encoding or the decoding software for slow scan TV on my computer, and I just record the images that are being fed into my computer. I record them as video files, and then I compile them together into one larger work. And it's a digital file. And when I want them to be projected onto CRT, the big televisions, that's a CRT TV. There's a converter, so it can convert a digital signal into an analog signal and feed it into the TV. Oh. Yeah, so that's how that works. So it's pretty simple. You just need to pick up a converter. They're relatively inexpensive, and then you can just transmit whatever digital file you want onto a CRT, onto any TV you want.
That's cool.
Yeah, that's the ESS thing. That's what that is. I'm really pretty fond of displaying my work on older TVs like that. I just think that they have a way nicer look than a flat panel TV. They look warmer, and they look certainly more mysterious, because those big TVs are maybe I'm weird, but they always inspire. I'm wow, that's crazy. Whatever is being displayed on that big TV, for whatever reason, looks more mysterious and more interesting than if it were displayed on a flat panel monitor or one of the thin TVs. I don't know why that is, but yeah, that's how I do it. I just get a converter.
That's cool. So you said you're super into TVs too. Where do you find your TVs for this? What's your I guess era of these that you're into?
The best television to me is the Sony Trinitron, which I think that they produced them from the early 80s to mid to late 90s, and they stopped producing them. So it's a Sony Trinitron. That is my perfect TV that I'm always scouring Craigslist and eBay for. People throw them away all the time.
I was gonna say, yeah, I feel like that's the type of TV you just see on the curb all the time.
Yep,
you know,
exactly. You see it on the curb.
I'm looking at photo. Oh, okay. Yeah, I've got. I've never had a Trinitron. I did have a Sony CRT up until about 2011. That was our main TV. But the look, I want to say there's a piece at LACMA at the Los Angeles County Museum of Art there. Asian American artist who did a visual piece making a flag. And he took about 50 of those TVs and just had that image visually going all day. That was my favorite thing when I was 14.
So sick.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. That sounds like it would have been beautiful and like really memorable. And I feel like I could be wrong because I haven't seen it, of course, but I feel like the effect would not have been as impactful if the artist used like flat TVs.
For sure, it wouldn't have been as impactful.
Wouldn't have been as impactful. Yeah. Wouldn't have been as visually interesting if they were to use a flat television as opposed to a CRT. And like I'm saying, like I don't know why it is, but like when stuff is transmitted via a CRT, to me, it's like way more visually interesting and mysterious to look at. And I don't know why, but yeah.
Also, as a tangent, this goes for the Smash community, for the community who plays Smash. When they're doing Melee tournaments for that game, they play it on CRT TV.
Yep.
Do they really?
Yeah.
Yep.
There's lag. There's latency and lag issues that encounter with the HD monitors, and they're really adamant. So you want a CRT for it.
Wow. Yeah, I did not know that.
They're huge in the gaming community. I play video games myself, and like I almost 100% of the time I prefer playing on a CRT. Like I'm really big into like 90s computer games, and like I insist on playing on like a dedicated CRT setup because it's so much nicer playing a game from that era on a CRT and not a flat panel monitor. It's
what games in particular?
Yeah.
So let me think. There is a lot. So actually the first thing that pops into my head it's not even a PC game, but it's like the first thing I thought of. It is a PlayStation 1 game that I play on a CRT, and it's called LSD.
I'm gonna maybe say is it LSD. I've never played it, but
it's that now that game is it's a must that you play it on a CRT. For a bit of background on the game, so it is something that appeals to me as an artist a great deal because essentially LSD drops your character into a randomly generated environment. And all the textures are totally randomly generated. And if you run up to a surface and touch it, it based on what you touch and what time you touch it at, it generates a completely new random environment with different textures and different music. And the music is like, I downloaded the soundtrack for LSD, and I think it had close to 400 tracks because that's like how random the music is.
Oh my God.
Yeah, no, it's an amazing game. And if you're a visual artist or a musician, it's like absolutely worth a look because it's so innovative and dynamic. But yeah, so that's a game I really like.
That's cool. I've never heard of that before, but that sounds insane.
It has one of the best creepypastas somebody did years ago. That's how I found it.
Yeah, send that to me because I would love to read it. That game, I love it, but it creeps me out, and I would love to be more scared.
Yeah.
that sounds great. In terms of other like 90s computer games, there is one that I really like called Grim Fandango, which is
Schiffers.
Yep. That's one of my favorites of all time. I like it's crazy. It's going to sound like a lie, but I play so many that I'm like drawing a blank on which ones I play.
It happens.
It happens. Yeah, no, it does. But I'm sure I'll think of some like in 20 minutes and then I will tell you, because that's how my brain works. But yeah, I play tons of, let's come back to it because I will certainly remember them.
Should we talk about some cylinder loops?
Yeah, sure. Let's do it.
Take it away, Thomas. Yeah.
Okay, for sure. Yeah, so KCSB is based at UCSB, like we kind of mentioned before. And you know, from what we understand, the record was made by like manipulating like recordings from like the UCSB like wax cylinder archive.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah, can you talk more about it? Like, how'd you come across that archive? Like, I've had friends that like worked in the archive and stuff. Like, it's really cool. And like, I sent it to them. I was like, dude, this record that I like is like made from the stuff you guys are digitizing, you know?
Excellent. I'm glad to hear that. Yeah. I came across the archive. I am like highly reliant on Wikipedia and Google. And I like for research, I'll just kind of open up a browser window and I'll just like start typing stuff I'm even vaguely interested in. And on one of those kind of Google journeys, I came across the Cylinder archives. I wish I could remember exactly what I looked up to get to the page, but and I just started clicking around and listening to stuff, and I'm like, oh man, this is exemplary. Also, I don't think you need to pay anything to use the samples in your music, which was another very appealing facet of it. Yeah, and I remember emailing them like, "Hey, do I need to like give you guys any money if I use these in a potential project?" And they were like, "Nope, go nuts. You can do whatever you want." So from there, I was like, "Okay, like I'm just going to start listening to as much of this as I can." And saving whatever I find even remotely interesting, and maybe trying to bring it into Ableton and mess with it a little bit. And I didn't start it thinking I would make something as, to me, important in the scope of my career as Cylinder Loops has been, but eventually it kind of evolved into that because it started like really turning into something incredible.
That's awesome. So I guess like, how did you know exactly like what qualities you were chasing for in terms of like stuff you'd end up using?
So it is kind of similar to what I was saying earlier about shortwave radio. Very, very similar, in fact, in that I looked for stuff with in wax cylinders that was more textural. So like popping and crackling and just anything like that. I would search for that specifically. And then on the other side of the spectrum, I would search for things that were more of a focal point. So, a woman laughing or, a baby crying or something like particularly poignant, like a particular poignant piece of music that that just really stood out to me. And if it had a melody I liked or a quality I liked, I would layer it with the more textural stuff that I would find in other cylinders and make a composition. So that's kind of how I choose my samples in the archives.
That's really cool. So I've never actually like dove too into like the UCSB like the actual like archive or anything. So like what type of recordings are there? Is it like music or is it just like talking or just like bits of audio from different things? Like
yeah, it's all over the place. It's like everything. There's so many samples. It's unreal. Like there are amateur cylinders. So there are people who which are to me the most interesting. Amateur cylinders, people will like families and amateur musicians or people who just wanted like a committed recording of them whistling. Like they would record onto these amateur cylinders, which is kind of the modern day equivalent of like recording yourself on a tape recorder or what have you. So you'd have amateurs recording onto cylinders, and often they're like families talking to each other. Or like there's one that I'm particularly fond of a woman consoling a crying baby, which is very prominent on my record, which sounds so weird, but it's true. Very prominent. Like a crying child or someone just like messing around with a fiddle or, an amateur band who they weren't in a studio, they were at home. And to me, the amateur recordings they're my favorite because they're all over the place. You can open an amateur cylinder and it can be anything. I've spent hours and hours and hours listening to them. So there's amateur cylinders. There are more committed records of or cylinders of music that were obviously recorded in studios. And the way the archive is sorted, it's sorted in a really amazing way by instrument and by genre. So you can pick like, okay, I want to hear a banjo recording, and there will be like a whole list of banjos or a whole list of big band recordings, or like there's so many different genres and instruments It's nearly limitless. There's so much variety. But yeah, so a lot of studio recordings, a lot of amateur recordings, and it's all over the place. There's so much.
That's absolutely insane. I didn't know like the extent as to like the collection that they had like that. That's so cool. I didn't know that there was like amateur recordings and stuff like that. That's so crazy.
Yeah. Like even if you're not honestly, even if you're not necessarily interested in music and you are more interested in in like narratives and like storytelling and people, if you just have an interest in humans and you're like, I want to, listen to some random person like, many years ago, just talk about their day or whatever. Like you can find that in the Cylinder archive. So honestly, I would recommend looking at the Cylinder archive to like basically anyone, because there's something for everybody in it for sure.
Yeah. How many hours do you think you've like spent just like trolling through different recordings and stuff?
Man, like I don't even know. Like I spent like a year doing it.
That's crazy.
Yeah, I spent just collecting samples and listening to cylinders, and listening to really beautiful ones over and over and over again. I spent like a year of and like a few hours a day for like a year collecting samples and putting cylinder loops together. So I almost had a dedicated year just to wax cylinders.
Have you ever like talked to, I guess, like the people that are running the archive at all and just been like, hey, like this is what I'm doing? Like, I feel like they would really appreciate that.
So that's a really good point. I have been wanting for a while to mail a tape to the archives, and I don't know why I haven't done it yet, but I'm going to. That's a good idea. Because I would really like them to hear the completed work, because I'm extremely proud of it. And I think that they might like, I'm certain they know the value of what they're doing. They must, but like, I would like to present them with this tangible work just to show them like how much I appreciate all the work that they do. I would like to show that to them, but yeah, no, I don't think they really know about my record, and I think I'm going to send it to them. That's a really good idea.
Yeah, you should send it to them, because I feel like that would just be like, yeah, that I feel like they should just like know about this, like someone actually using their stuff for, I don't know, like music, and like just someone enjoying it to the extent that like you are. Like,
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I want them to know that how big of an impact it has made on my life. And this, I don't mean to sound pompous, but I think Cylinder Loops is pretty amazing. And I feel like if I sent it to them, they might like think, oh, wow, this is a really valuable thing that we're doing, and people are really getting something out of it. I'd love to demonstrate that to them. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. Cause I know that like, sometimes like this happens to me when I do things too, but it's like, you don't necessarily like see or like, that people care about the stuff that you're doing until like somebody finally tells you, and you're like, oh, wow. Like I knew that this was probably important, but like nobody has ever told me that, until like, yeah.
Absolutely. It's having, especially in the kind of the information age where we're all very isolated. It is so important to demonstrate to somebody, especially in a tangible way, that what they do as an artist or, as a collector or as a creative, like is valuable and important. That's such an important thing to express to people now, especially given how isolated people are. Mm-hmm. It's essential to me to demonstrate that you care about a service that people are performing. It's essential, and that's a good idea. And I think I will mail my tape to them because I really want them to know.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So I think we have like one more question before like we start like wrapping up here. But you mentioned too that you have like a podcast and like a radio show and stuff. So I guess like the premise of like your podcast, it involves diving into like memory hold, like misbegotten and downright bizarre sects of like American history. How would you describe your approach to discovering like all of this like knowledge and stuff that you talk about and just stuff on a daily basis?
This is so boring, but Wikipedia. Wikipedia. That's like, I always have Wikipedia open. I have it open right now. It's like pinned to my browser. What I'll do is, and another website actually that I'll get into after Wikipedia, but I will just randomly type in any state and I'll like, scroll to the bottom, and there will be like a portal for the state where you can click on it and you can learn even more about the state. And eventually, if you dig deep enough, you'll come across these really like bizarre instances in history or monuments or what have you. So a lot of Wikipedia. And another website I use is called Roadside America. Roadside America is a website that is dedicated to like interesting and novel sites and locations, and across the country. And a lot of the time, I'll be on Roadside America, and I'll come across a location or a place that I will find to be like particularly interesting. And I'll think like there can be, I wish there was more dedicated to this subject on this website, because I think people should know, because they would like to know. So I'll select a Roadside America monument, and I'll do some more digging, and then that will eventually kind of turn into an episode. And then a third thing is just personal experience. Like, for example, I just finished producing another episode about the Luxor Casino in Las Vegas.
Oh, wow.
'Cause I was just there, and I thought like, this is insane. This is such a weird place. And the more I dug into it, the more I thought like, man, this is going to make a great Unknown America episode. And so it kind of turned into one. And that will be live in about a week. But so, yeah, it's usually Wikipedia, Roadside America, and other smaller websites, and then just personal experience, but mostly Wikipedia.
That's awesome. I was going to say, I really enjoy your Instagram as well, because I feel like it gives like a brief look into like some of the stuff that you're into as well.
I'm glad. I work hard to kind of curate it, to make it like little brief glances at what I'm working on and random things I find interesting. So that's I work pretty hard on it, and I'm glad that people are like looking at it and like maybe it's enriching their knowledge or interesting them in any way. But I appreciate that.
Yeah. You post like Wikipedia articles on there every now and then. You posted too that you're struggling getting an air siren, as like an air raid siren inside your car. Like, did you happen to get that home?
No, unfortunately, I did not. It was, I don't think the picture was really doing justice, like how huge this siren was. It was the width and length of my car. And like, I stood there and I like stared at it, like, how am I going to get this in my car? Just like in total denial. And then I was like, okay, I need to get a U-Haul to get this home. And then I had a brief phone conversation with my dad, and he was like, listen, like, you do not want an air raid siren in your yard or your house. Like, just let someone else get it. You don't have the room. And I'm like, yeah, all right. And so I hope somebody took it and is giving it a loving home environment, and taking good care of it. But unfortunately, that person is not me.
How much did that air raid siren like go for?
So that I'm not entirely sure about. I have never really seen one for sale per se online. The that air raid siren in particular was dumped on the side of the road.
Oh,
wow. Weird place. Yeah. So it wasn't for sale. It was just kind of dumped somewhere. And my friend pointed it out to me, and he was like, listen, like, you have to go get this siren. And I'm like, yeah, I know. And I literally got to do it. I literally ran out of my house and got in my car. I was like, I got to go. And I sped for 45 minutes. Like, oh God, I hope it's still there. And then it was, and I couldn't get it in my car. So yeah.
Dude, that is so sick.
Yeah.
Do you know if it like worked by chance? Like, would you have like turned that thing on? Is it like illegal to turn on an air raid siren if it works? Like,
it must be. I live in a really small suburb of Chicago, and if I turned an air raid siren on in my yard, I would get arrested instantly. Like, I feel like I would go deaf, and everyone else would go deaf too.
Yeah.
But it looked like it did work. It had everything required to get it started and functional. So I am inclined to think it worked, and they just disconnected it and didn't know what to do with it. Like the park district or whoever was getting rid of it. So I think it did work. And unfortunately, I will never know the truth, but that is my assumption.
Hey, well, if you ever hear an air raid siren, you probably will know who picked it up, you know?
I will. I'll be very jealous.
If you put 3 air raid sirens in different spots and you kind of center yourself in the middle, it does make a beautiful tone.
Oh my God. Have you seen that video?
Yeah, I'm referring to that TikTok someone had posted.
I have not seen it. So please send that to me. I must see it.
We'll send it to you.
I gotta find it.
It's like 3 air raid sirens like going off and some person standing in the middle, and it's making this like beautiful like ambient sound, and it's just like, oh my God.
It's
like
harmonious.
Yeah, it's crazy.
With their permission, I might sample it. So it might make my way into some music soon.
That would be sick. That'd be sick. We'll send it to
amazing.
you. We'll send it to you.
Yeah.
Maddie, do you want to take any of these bullet points here?
Oh boy. I mean, I guess I'd want to go back a little bit to cylinder loops and just like ask a couple more kind of final things there.
Sure.
Because sonically, to me, what I really loved about the album is that while you're talking about what you're sampling here, though, the world that it ends up creating really threw me off, because I'm like, is this a carnival? Is this kind of like the outside of a Nickelodeon? The stuff that you're pulling from, I think, goes a lot further on that aspect. And then at the bottom of the page, the term hauntology is thrown out there, and I've got my big old Mark Fisher reader there, but exactly to you, what does that term mean? And then in the larger scale of the work you've been doing.
So what does hauntology mean
to you?
to me specifically. So now I had admittedly not really heard that term until Philip Montoro, the person who conducted the interview for the reader, until he told me. I was not aware of it. However, I am very familiar with the work of one highly prominent hauntology artist, the Caretaker. I'm certain you know the Caretaker is very prominent and very influential. I love everything the Caretaker has put out. So I suppose hauntology seems like it would just be kind of capturing echoes of time that has long since passed, and kind of weaving these echoes together and making them relevant and interesting and easy to listen to. So that's because I dug into hauntology a bit more, and a unifying trait between a lot of artists is they're very easy to listen to. Like you can put a lot of hauntology on while doing other things, and it's just like, it's often, unless I'm listening to the wrong stuff, it's often quite soothing and just very pleasant and nice to listen to. So I suppose it would be taking old memories that have been forgotten and kind of expanding them and creating something that a lot of people can appreciate, which I think is a noble pursuit.
Thank you.
Sure.
Well, I think that just about does it for all of the questions we have, right, Maddie?
Just about, outside, I guess, of the video game question, if you've got any.
Oh, yeah.
The only things that are coming to mind, for whatever reason, I must be kind of stuck in like a PlayStation loop, but like are all old PlayStation games. Like I'm thinking of a ton. There's one called No One Can Stop Mr. Domino, which is where you chase a little domino around a grocery store. That's one of my favorites. There's Parappa the Rapper, which is about a rapping dog, which I love.
That's so sick.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll send over a list. I think my list is also it might be on my Facebook and a somewhat recent Instagram post. But I'll shoot it over, and you can critique it and and tell me if you've heard of any of these titles.
Have you ever played any of like the old Fallout games on PC? Yes.
There's one, the original Fallout. That's one that I played quite extensively. Admittedly, I played the more recent Fallout games a lot more, and my favorite part of Fallout is the in-game radio station.
Yes, it's so sick.
I have a Spotify playlist of every single song that has ever been in a Fallout game, and I listen to it on repeat obsessively all the time. But yeah, I love the Fallout games, especially the original one, which is a game that I play quite frequently.
Yeah, I've never played the original, but I follow a couple like Fallout like subreddits and stuff, and like they'll occasionally reference like the originals, and it's just it looks like a completely different game.
Yeah, it's a totally different game. It's of course it's more technical, and it's less of what the new games are, which is running around and like doing a lot of like hand-to-hand combat, and it's more intellectual. and you have to make more decisions that are like, not so much just hacking at people and using weapons and beating them up, and like exploring environments and more it's a lot more reading and more analytical thinking. But it's like a different breed of game, and it's very good.
That's cool. Well, I think that just about does it for our questions. Haley, where can people keep up with like any of your, I guess, music or art endeavors, or just, I guess, anything Hali Palombo?
Yeah, so my always the best place to follow me is my Instagram, which is Hali Palombo 92 or Hali Palombo Music, and I also have a website that's just halipalombo.com.
Sick. Well, there it is. Be sure to follow Haley and keep up with like any of her art, and I guess just all the interesting stuff. Follow the social media. At least that's what I like. I think it's sick.
Yeah. Thank you.
So I guess we do have like one last question here. It's kind of a big one. Are you ready for it?
I hope so.
It's like the biggest one of the interview. Nobody's ever prepared for it. So
let's go.
You got to give it your best shot.
So you're out on a drive, and you just kind of see something in the distance. You start driving out that way. It takes you a bit to get there, but you get there. As soon as you get out of your car, a rat jumps in your mouth. The rat's gonna jump in, and you get to choose if it's gonna be the rat's head or the rat's butt, and why.
I would go for the head for sure, because my predominant reason is I don't want a rat's tail or butt in my mouth.
Yeah,
that's very important to me. And also I feel like the rat's head is just more texturally interesting to have in your mouth, because you got like the nose and the whiskers, and it would just be very nice little treat. Very, very interesting feeling to have a rat's head in your mouth. I picked the head.
All right.
That was great, actually. That was an amazing answer. I love how you were more about the textures here. Like, never have gotten that. That's sick.
Be a better experience, I think. More interesting.
That's great. Yeah, thank you. That was great.
Yeah, of course.
So that's all we have for today. Thanks for tuning into TBD on KCSB FM 91.9 every Sunday, 4 to 6 p.m. and NetNet Radio every Saturday, 4 p.m. This is Hali Palombo from Chicago. Thanks, Haley.
Thank you.